You've followed every rule you were given about success. Now the outcome doesn't match the effort. This isn't about failure. It's about a promise your brain still believes. You sit in a quiet room early in the morning. The phone screen lights up your face before anything else does. A banking app opens, then closes without change. There's a small pause before you move. Not tired in a visible way, just paused mid-thought. Like you're checking something that never resolves. You still expect things to align at some point, even if nothing in your current reality supports that expectation. That gap is where most of your tension lives. If this feels familiar, stay with it. We're going to break down where that expectation actually comes from, and why it doesn't disappear even when reality contradicts it. Because what you're feeling didn't start recently. It started much earlier than you think. There is a very strange kind of exhaustion. You don't exactly feel like a failure. You just feel like your life hasn't truly started yet. Every morning, you open your banking app. You glance at the numbers, doing some quick, familiar math in your head. Then you close the screen, let out a sigh, and go to work as if nothing happened. Right now, your brain is triggering a survival mechanism. It convinces you that the present is just a temporary state. It keeps you waiting for some future milestone for everything to officially begin. And so, the thought, maybe in a few years everything will be fine, repeats season after season. Until years go by, and you suddenly realize you are still standing at the exact starting line of preparation. The cost isn't money, it's time. The most exhausting part isn't that you are struggling, it's the feeling that you are living in an endless waiting room. The truth is, you stopped expecting a massive success, but you never stopped waiting for the day you finally arrive. And that floating feeling, it didn't appear by accident. That floating feeling didn't appear by accident. The truth is, you were handed a foolproof formula for life right from the start. When you were a kid, teachers told you that hard work guarantees success. Parents told you a college degree was the only path to a stable life. The adults around you constantly repeated the exact same map, drawing out a perfect, predictable baseline. The human brain is wired to build predictions about the future based on whatever it hears the most. When those promises are repeated long enough, they become an absolute, undeniable truth inside of you. And so, the thought, if I just do everything right, things will work out, became the hidden compass for all your effort. The promise wasn't a secret. It was repeated everywhere. But the cost of that belief turned out to be heavy. When those expectations become your entire identity, failing to reach them feels deeply personal. You end up blaming yourself. But the reality is, you didn't invent those heavy expectations. You inherited them. And then, reality changed before you ever got the chance to cash in on the promise. And then, reality changed before you ever got the chance to cash in on the promise. You stepped into the real world at the exact moment all the old rules suddenly stopped working. You held your degree in your hand, sending resumes everywhere. But then you realized that even entry-level positions required years of unrealistic experience. Student debt and living expenses showed up before your very first paycheck. Right now, your brain enters a minor crisis as it hits a harsh reality. The outcome no longer matches the effort you put in. There is only one thought spinning in your head. Wait, wasn't this supposed to work differently? The biggest problem isn't that you went the wrong way or ignored the map. You are hurting because you did everything exactly right. This shock leaves a confusing, heavy feeling of being lost inside. The truth is, what shocked you wasn't failure. What shocked you was that obedience no longer worked. And that is where the deep psychological damage begins. That psychological damage begins to eat away at you from the inside. The truth is, your brain can tolerate hardship, but it struggles much more with contradiction. You did everything exactly right, yet you are no closer to the destination you were promised. This is when cognitive dissonance kicks in, as your real-world experience completely denies the story you believed for years. Two opposing beliefs now live in your head at the same time. On one side, I did the right things, and on the other, But this isn't working. This conflict drains your energy every single day. It creates a constant lingering anxiety and causes your self-doubt to grow deeper. A toxic thought begins to take over. Maybe the problem is me. It happens fast. Confusion becomes self-blame faster than most people notice. And over time, that endless waiting slowly becomes your actual lifestyle. This waiting room was supposed to be temporary, but you realize you've been stuck here much longer than you ever planned. The reality is, most young adults today don't feel like they are truly living. They just feel like their lives are being indefinitely delayed. Every day you quietly save photos of apartments you can't afford. You look up housing prices, let out a sigh, and close the tab. You put off family plans and delay long-term decisions simply because everything feels too unstable. Right now, your brain tries to soothe you with a familiar mechanism. It convinces you that the present is still just a preparation phase. The familiar thought plays again, maybe next year. But when does next year actually arrive? At some point, this waiting stops feeling temporary. It becomes your reality. You completely lose that sense of internal stability and belonging. And then, the explosion of technology makes that heavy feeling so much worse. Social media didn't create your insecurity. It just industrialized it into a loop you can't escape. Now you are no longer just living your life. You are watching it from the outside as an audience member. You post something, you check your phone, then you check it again. You try to pretend you don't care, but your mind never truly leaves the screen. Right now, your brain is learning a dangerous mechanism. It measures your self-worth based on feedback from a digital world. The quiet thought constantly spinning in your head is, "Did anyone notice?" It's a performance. The cost is that your identity is now entirely dependent on external signals. The audience followed you right into your own head. But the hardest part isn't the pressure. Here is the part that nobody likes talking about, or even wants to face. The reality is, you are no longer chasing the future. You are just chasing an old version of the future, a blueprint that was drawn up a long time ago. Every day you continue to measure your self-worth by the old milestones of a previous generation. You constantly look around, comparing your life progress to others and tearing yourself apart. Because your brain is wired to cling to old expectations. It does this because those things used to give you a sense of safety and clarity. And so, the only toxic thought sticking to your mind is, "I'm behind." But are you sure about that? The cost of holding on is heavy. Any gap between your reality and those expectations is immediately labeled as a personal failure. But look directly at the truth. You may not be behind. You may just be measuring your life against a world that no longer exists. And once you realize that, it changes everything. Once you see this pattern, the confusion inside you completely changes shape. You realize that your exhaustion and endless waiting are not a strange weakness. They are a perfectly logical reaction to everything you have been through. The truth is, you are carrying the combined weight of an economic shift, a brutal job market, a shaken identity, and an uncertain future. The human brain always enters a crisis when the internal map of expectations no longer matches the external reality. The cost of that misalignment is years of blaming and tearing yourself apart. A sudden wave of clarity finally soothes your mind. So, that's why it feels like this. The landscape changed long before you blamed yourself. Because the reality is, you may not be behind. You may just be measuring yourself against a future that disappeared years ago. If any part of this story felt uncomfortably familiar, you are definitely not the only one. Hit subscribe, and let's unpack another layer of the mind tomorrow. It was never just about falling behind. It was about continuing to use a map that stopped updating in the middle of your life, and still trusting that old map more than what you can actually see right now. You are not part of a generation that failed to grow up. You are part of a group that reached adulthood inside a system that kept changing its rules right after you entered. You didn't stop moving forward. The reference point moved first. At what point did your effort stop feeling connected to the outcome? Not in theory, but in your actual day-to-day decisions. Let me know in the comments. If this mirrors something you've been carrying quietly, you can stay for the next one. There is no pressure to decide anything else from this.